Welcome to the Four Cardinal Points official channel. Four Cardinal Points organization is a multifaceted research and analysis center based in Istanbul, Turkey. Today I'm glad to introduce you to our new playlist called Genocidal Studies, in which we'll gather evidence, research, and analyze past and present genocides, their characteristics, and their biases. So let's start with the role of geopolitics in genocide determinations. If we agree that the legal thresholds for genocide differ between the Rohingya and Gaza cases, we must confront the elephant in the room. Why does geopolitics so often dictate who faces accountability? This is not just academic, it strikes at the heart of whether international law is a tool for justice or a weapon of power. So let's focus on geopolitical bias in genocide determinations. In the case of Myanmar, its isolation from the rest, relative isolation from the rest of the world, took a major instance. No major power shielded Myanmar. The People's Republic of China offered quiet support, but the so-called West, the Asian organization, and even Muslim majority nations united to condemn the Tatmadaw. What was the result? Swift United Nations action, International Court of Justice case, and United States genocide designation. In the case of Israel, strategic shields played a major role. The United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom provide diplomatic cover, framing Gaza as a complex conflict rather than systemic annihilation. An example is that the United States publicly opposed South Africa's International Court of Justice case filed last year, calling it meritless. So who's the good victim and the bad victim? What's its narrative? In the case of the Rohingya, stateless, defenseless, with no ties to armed resistance, a pure victim narrative is genocide recognition. Meanwhile, in the case of Palestinians, Hamas' October 7th attacks allowed Israel to frame its war as self-defense, muddying genocide claims, even though international law prohibits collective punishment. So we've got here a selective outrage. In the Global South perspective, many nations ask why Rwanda, Bosnia, and Rohingya, but not Palestine, Yemen, or the Uyghurs in China. So the data point is that the United States has never sanctioned Israel for human rights violations under the Lehi law, despite documented abuses. Let's cut to the chase and go straight to the legal consequences of bias in the determination of genocide. The first point to take into account is the constant undermining of the Genocide Convention. When powerful states block investigations, for example, in the case of United States vetoes of United Nations Gaza ceasefires at the Security Council of the United Nations, that signals that the genocide law applies only to the weak. What's the risk? The risk is that the convention becomes performative not preventive. Also, the intent of double standard comes to the fore. So we've got, in the case of Myanmar, military memos ordering Rohingya expulsion were treated as smoking guns for genocidal intent. However, in the case of Israel, official statements, such as made by the highest state officials like Smotrich and other cabinet ministers, calling human animals Amalek, are dismissed as rhetoric, not evidence of policy. So the scholarly question is, should intent standards be context dependent? If so, doesn't that reward strategic ambiguity? The path forward must contain in itself the demand of consistent standards and apply the same forensic analysis to all cases, whether the perpetrator is a pariah state or a Western ally. For example, compare how the International Court of Justice treated Myanmar's denials versus Israel's self-defense claims. Also, it is utterly important to expose the gaps between law and practice. Document how diplomatic interference, such as lobbying, vetoes, sanctions threats, shapes legal outcomes. And the research opportunity here is to quantify how often geopolitical alliances predict international court crimes or International Court of Justice actions. Finally, the path forward must also contain an amplification of marginalized voices. In this sense, centering, for example, Rohingya and Palestinian scholars in genocide studies avoids paternalistic framing. And also caution must be present at avoiding reducing suffering to competitions of victimhood. So the final thought of 4 cardinal points is justice as a political battlefield. We consider justice as a political battlefield. We understand that law is not neutral. It is a terrain where power is contested. And our task as scholars is to, 1, name the biases, 2, challenge the hierarchies, and 3, insist that never again means for anyone. So let's open the floor. What do you see the most urgent gaps in genocide scholarship today? I'll leave this question up to you. You're very welcome to write in the comments. And if you like this video, please like this video. As always, if you think we deserve a subscription, please do subscribe, and that will help us a lot to convey the message to further audiences. Thank you very much, and have a very good day.